It's impossible to be vegan during the holidays. And by impossible, I of course don't mean that it's not possible to stay vegan during the holidays. What I mean is it's a very difficult time that often feels impossible to navigate. Now, holidays are difficult for many people for many reasons. For some, their biggest concern is remembering to wear their stretchy pants or whether or not their team is going to win. For others, the Thanksgiving holiday is a day of mourning, representing a painful reminder of the near total erasure of America's earliest populations. And for vegans, we have our own set of struggles. Now, I'm not saying we struggle the most or deserve the most sympathy, but I am saying we do struggle in ways that are often misunderstood, and I'm here to discuss them. This video was inspired by a headline I saw discussing a viral social media post about a family conflict, which we are going to discuss, and it really got me thinking about my own struggles during the holidays and reminded me that I've been wanting to make a video like this for years. If you're vegan, hopefully watching this will help you feel a little less alone over the upcoming holiday season. If you're not vegan, I hope this will help you understand us a little more and maybe inspire you to extend a little extra compassion to the lone vegan at your holiday events. If you're not American or from one of the few other countries that celebrates, good for you. You don't even have to think about any of this when it comes to Thanksgiving, but maybe you can relate when it comes to other holidays. This video is meant to focus on the holidays in general, but because Thanksgiving is right around the corner and because it's the one that most Americans celebrate, I'm going to be focusing on it a little bit more. We're going to cover the history of Thanksgiving and how it informs our current celebrations, the many struggles of being vegan over the holidays, and the viral social media post I mentioned. So first, let's get into the history of Thanksgiving. Most of this information comes from a National Geographic article about the evolution of the Thanksgiving meal. Historians long considered the first Thanksgiving to have taken place in 1621, when the Mayflower Pilgrims who founded the Plymouth colony in Massachusetts sat down for a 3-day meal with the Wampanoag. However, the meal wasn't the meaningful symbol of peace that it was later portrayed to be. Rather, it was likely just a routine English harvest celebration. Harvest festivals have existed for centuries, if not millennia, as a way to celebrate a successful yield of crops. The word Thanksgiving technically means prayerful fasting, but in 1841, a Boston publisher printed a book containing a letter written by one of the Pilgrims describing the harvest celebration meal, and the publisher called the meal the first Thanksgiving, thus cementing our correlation between that early Pilgrim Wampanoag meal and the word Thanksgiving. But the reason for that first feast was not a happy one, and the relationship between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag was fraught. When the Pilgrims first arrived in 1620, they were unprepared and had little food, so they robbed corn from Native Americans' graves and storehouses. In November 1621, the Wampanoag heard the Pilgrims shooting off guns, which historians believe worried the Wampanoag that war was underway. King Massasoit sent 90 men to investigate before realizing the Pilgrims were mid-celebration. The Wampanoag then hunted deer meat and joined the festivities. What a surprise! Even the earliest American colonizers had a thing for guns. The newfound peace between the Pilgrims and Wampanoag was driven largely by tribe and trade rivalries, but that peace didn't last long. By 1637, the détente between the Pilgrims and Wampanoag had disintegrated, and the Pilgrims started a decades-long war with their indigenous neighbors. Ultimately, the colonists massacred the local tribes, including the Wampanoag. Did it occur to anyone that maybe we should have just called it a day on the whole Thanksgiving thing after that? Unfortunately, no, that did not happen. Although the concept of Thanksgiving sort of floundered for the next 2 centuries until President Lincoln again established Thanksgiving as a national holiday during the Civil War, cementing the feast as an American tradition. He was also looking for a way to gloss over the schism created by the Civil War and homogenize an American identity. So what about the food? How did we get to where we are today? The 1621 harvest celebration had a menu of venison, corn, shellfish, cornmeal, beans, nuts, dried berries, pumpkin, and, yes, turkey. The Pilgrims and Native Americans likely hunted and served wild fowl like geese, duck, or turkey. The native large bird was relatively easy to capture, so it quickly became an important source of food for early American settlers. Something that stands out to me here is the necessity aspect. eating whatever they could harvest themselves because it was the only option they had. Obviously, in our modern world, for people who aren't suffering from food insecurity, the things we eat we're choosing to eat. There's no necessity at play. From the 17th through the early 19th century, the presence of 3 or 4 kinds of meat was important to emphasize that a meal was a feast. However, the turkey has long taken center stage and was given a boost after World War II with a full-scale marketing campaign for the bird. What? Americans eating something because a corporation told them to via marketing? And then acting like eating such thing is somehow essential to the human experience? This is unprecedented. I've never seen such a thing. What happened is that in the 1920s, a man named Edward Bernays, who was a PR expert working at the Beechnut Company, exploited all the moralization and health fears around breakfast to help the company push its bacon. Production of dairy products was outpacing consumption. They required farmers to pay a percentage of their harvest into a national fund that essentially serves as a marketing agency for dairy products. Oh, wait, no. Yes, I have. Early ads would focus on how to prepare and present the perfect bird, promoting branded tools like roasters, ranges, pop-up thermometers, and oven cooking bags. Roasters, pop-up thermometers, and oven cooking bags. So you're saying because in the first half of the 20th century, some companies wanted to sell these items, 46 million turkeys are now killed every year for Thanksgiving? Dark. It's dark. Sarah Josepha Hale, editor of the magazine Godey's Lady Book, was arguably the most influential in crafting the classic New England Thanksgiving meal. In her 1827 novel Northwood, she described a meal of roast turkey with stuffing and gravy, and later printed recipes for pumpkin pie. I don't know about you, but to me it's wild how much of what Americans now take to be such an essential Thanksgiving meal that you'd think it's the 28th Amendment basically comes down to the handiwork of an 1800s cooking influencer and some 1900s marketers. Marketers may have shaped many of the rituals of the holiday, but all Americans from all backgrounds certainly do their part to maintain them. Most Americans today no longer celebrate that myth of the first Thanksgiving. They're just celebrating family. While we may not be directly celebrating the myth of the first Thanksgiving, as an American, I find it pretty eerie and disturbing to have a holiday centered around family and gratitude, knowing that we are celebrating on stolen land and celebrating an event with a pretty violent and dark history. There's this weird cherry picking of Thanksgiving tradition. We like this, eating a big meal that involves turkey, aspect, but we're going to ignore this, the Pilgrims massacring the local tribes that were literally responsible for their survival aspect. To me, all of that just makes the tightly holding of the traditional Thanksgiving meal all the more ridiculous. It's almost seen as unpatriotic to suggest a Thanksgiving meal without turkey. And with that, let's get into the struggles of being a vegan during the holidays. Obviously, the first struggle is that they're very centered around animal foods. There are animal foods in most classic Thanksgiving dishes, even aside from the turkey. It's the dairy and mashed potatoes or mac and cheese, the chicken stock and bread stuffing, the pork sausage and meat stuffing, the whipped cream on pumpkin pie, etc., etc. Also a side struggle, if you're like me, maybe you don't even like the traditional holiday food, even the veganized versions of it. In my opinion, it doesn't have a ton of flavor, at least not flavors that I prefer. I tend to like spicy, zesty flavors and crunchy textures, so not the muted autumnal flavors and mushy textures present at most Thanksgiving meals. Whether or not it's actually the cruelest animal food, I think the turkey feels like the worst part for many of us because it's so visceral, because turkeys have become kind of a mascot of the holiday, because it's usually displayed as the whole turkey carcass, because that doesn't seem to bother anyone else other than us. Being around a whole turkey carcass or multiple turkey carcasses all day as a vegan is very upsetting. Maybe you're lucky in that your family don't display the whole turkey on the table, but you're still likely to be aware of it. Usually it's sitting on the kitchen counter for hours on end, the whole house smells like turkey, the whole thing is pretty unavoidable. To put into a context that more people can understand, most people, vegan or not, consider dogs as animals worthy of love and protection, that in most countries you'd be considered a criminal for harming. And for vegans, many of us have taken the time to learn about and get to know turkeys in real life at places like farm animal sanctuaries. Some of us have spent time with them, pet them, interacted with them in a way that many people interact with dogs and cats. So imagine you, a non-vegan who loves dogs, going to your family's house for a holiday that's supposed to be about gratitude and spending quality time together. And there is a roasted dog's carcass on the kitchen counter. Maybe someone's cutting into it, maybe it's being displayed at the table. Think about how horrifying that would be. And I know most people don't consider that the same thing, and that's because of something called speciesism. To most vegans, in all the ways that matter in terms of ethics, turkeys and dogs are no different. It brings to mind the famous quote by philosopher Jeremy Bentham: "The question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer?" While we can argue all day long about how turkeys and dogs are different, most vegans would agree that both species are worthy of protection. So since vegans don't view the world through the lens of speciesism, the dog analogy is the best way I can describe the horror of the turkey carcass. With that in mind, it's no wonder many vegans don't want to participate in Thanksgiving celebrations at all, and why many choose to sit it out. Which brings me to the next struggle, feeling like you have to choose between honoring your deeply held morals and spending quality time with your family. Hypothetically, you can spend time with your family at any time, but Thanksgiving and Christmas are national holidays. They're days that most people have off. They're days when most businesses are closed, and oftentimes they're the only time of year people see their extended family. If you have multiple families like you and your significant other, most likely you're going to be seeing one family one holiday and the other family on the other. So you really only have one holiday to see certain of your family members. I'll admit, in the past I've thought, well, what if I just skip Thanksgiving and then make plans to see these people at other times? But life is busy, the holidays are busy, and then it almost becomes this stressful task of making multiple different plans to see different parties on different weekends throughout an already busy time of year. So there's clearly an appeal to seeing everyone on the same day. And there's something nice about being with your whole family at once, everyone taking this time off to be together. But of course, that day coinciding with the mass slaughter of 46 million turkeys does create some internal dissonance. And having to even navigate that decision is a struggle. Another struggle is dealing with family that just don't get it, or feeling misunderstood. In the past, I've tried expressing to a family member what a difficult holiday Thanksgiving is for me and why my inclination is often to just sit it out, which was met with the question of, well, does that mean we can never share a meal together if we're eating non-vegan food? Which is a fair question, because I do go to non-vegan restaurants with my family where they're eating non-vegan food. I have meals at my family's house where they're eating non-vegan food. So what is the difference? It has to be said, as mentioned, there is something to be said about the visceral presence of the turkey carcass. It has to be said, there's something about the fact that this holiday is pretty much culturally dedicated to eating turkey. It's even nicknamed Turkey Day. It has to be said that in the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, 46 million turkeys are born, mostly in factory farms, kept in horrible conditions, and slaughtered at 18 weeks of age for this one day. So while our family members may have varying levels of understanding and accommodation of our lifestyles, it's hard knowing that they don't truly understand. But let's just say, despite all this, you do decide to show up to the family event and make the best of it. Which brings us to the next struggle, the pressure of vegan food activism. On the one hand, holidays are hypothetically a great opportunity to show people who wouldn't normally eat vegan food how delicious vegan food is. On the other hand, that in and of itself is f***ing stressful. While everyone else gets to slap together some beige slop and call it a casserole, yours better be the most convincing, delicious vegan food anyone has ever tried. No pressure. It's at the point where I feel like I need to run rigorous rounds of recipe testing for weeks on end leading up to the event. Because God forbid if in my scaling up of a dish it doesn't come out quite as delicious as when I make it at home, and then someone tries a bite of it after I've talked it up and they say, oh, it's interesting, which I really know means I hate it, and then no one eats it but me and my boyfriend, which secretly I'm kind of happy about because more leftovers for us, but also somehow makes me feel like I've failed the animals. I'm not saying that's ever happened to me, certainly not last Christmas with my vegan meatballs, but just hypothetically. And speaking of disapproving family members, the next struggle is dealing with teasing comments from non-vegan family members. I think some people have this struggle way more than others. I think it tends to be an issue more in the earlier years of someone's veganism, almost like their family are hazing them to see if they have what it takes to stick it out. And the comments can be not just jeering or inflammatory, but also downright ignorant and laced with cognitive dissonance. This is the perfect time to bring up the Reductress meme that goes viral every holiday season that I love so much. It's just perfect. It's healing. But needless to say, when we're already dealing with the above struggles, these teasing comments can sometimes be the final straw. Which leads me to the final struggle, trying to keep a positive demeanor and not be seen as that sourpuss vegan. Going back to the dog analogy, let's say you did walk into your family's Thanksgiving and see a roasted dog carcass sitting on the counter. Every fiber of your being would be screaming, "This is wrong, how is no one else seeing what I'm seeing?" So you're screaming on the inside, but if you were to actually say something, people's reactions would likely range from rolling their eyes to calling you extreme to saying things like, "See, this is why people don't like vegans." So your only option is really to sit silently, keep your feelings inside, not only that, but keep a smile on your face lest your discomfort make anyone else uncomfortable. Enough of my thoughts. I also opened this topic up to my patrons to get their input, and I'd like to share some of their responses. Multiple people expressed the frustration of only being able to eat what they brought themselves, especially when there are items that could easily be made vegan, and the frustration of cow's milk butter being added to everything. Someone else also echoed this frustration not just with dairy, but with meat being added to pretty much every dish, including veggies. Multiple people also said they enjoy the opportunity to show off their cooking skills. Another person expressed that in the spirit of a harvest festival, that it's best to stick to entrees resembling plants rather than meat analogs, which I think is an interesting take. A few people also expressed the frustrations I mentioned about having to be at a table with cruel foods and the backhanded compliments about your vegan cooking. Thank you to the patrons for sharing their experiences, and I hope hearing some of those helped you feel less alone. As a vegan during the holidays, you're most likely going through one of these struggles, if not multiple, if not all. But these are just the vegan-specific struggles. On top of that, many people, vegan or not, deal with the typical holiday stresses. Work stress, financial stress, feelings of loneliness or seasonal depression, tense family dynamics, and potential drama. If you're in a relationship, you've got to figure out whose side of the family you're going to piss off by spending it with the other one. And speaking of tense family dynamics, let's get into the online debate that had everyone talking. Well, it had Fox News talking. A few weeks ago, I saw this headline, "Reddit users' refusal to bend to militant vegan brothers' Thanksgiving demands sparks family drama." And I thought, oh brother, here we go. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Am I the Asshole or AITA subreddit. If not, it's a place where people anonymously post conflicts they're in and ask people if they are wrong in that situation, aka Am I the Asshole? This particular one was titled, "AITA for refusing to cook a vegetarian Thanksgiving dinner?" Background: I, 31 female, and my brother Mark, 35 male, do not get along. When he was a teen, he saw a documentary on factory farming and decided to become a vegetarian. He got very, very annoying about it quickly, but my dad shut him down when he started trying to get the rest of us to be vegetarian with him. Then he went to college, made a bunch of very strange friends, and went militantly vegan. It's his entire personality. I stopped talking to him after he threw a fit about one of my birthday dinners being at a steakhouse and spammed my messages in social media with pictures of abused cows. This brings up a pretty common vegan issue that it can be very painful to accept apathy from the people around us, including and especially our families. In Mark's defense, I just want to flag that these documentaries are very traumatizing, and sometimes after people watch them, even just being around meat can trigger that trauma that we witness the animals going through. My parents have been trying to repair the situation, and for a while it did seem like Mark was getting better, so I've been letting him back into contact gradually. Oh good, so Mark was recovering from his sickness of not wanting animals to be bred into captivity and suffer their short lives in inhumane conditions before being carted off to be slaughtered in traumatic ways. There is a cure for that sickness, Suspicious Basil, and it's called going vegan. Then he started dating Pam, who's some kind of vegan influencer. She is apparently moderately popular online, but I have no idea what she does exactly. Which sounds exactly like how my family would describe me. She goes on to share that last year Mark insisted the family have an all-vegetarian Thanksgiving, which apparently wasn't a hit. The sister's on the hook for hosting this year because the mom isn't in good health, and that Pam, the brother's girlfriend, started excitedly sending her vegan recipes, to which the sister insisted she would be making a traditional meal this year, which has caused friction with Mark and Pam and caused them to threaten not to come. This upset my mom, who asked me to just make what she made last year to keep the peace, but I told her that Mark needs to get over himself, and I'm not coddling him. I'm having turkey on Thanksgiving. My dad privately agrees with me, but Mark threatening not to come is upsetting my mom so much that he's worried it will impact her health. There's a not big, but also not zero chance that these might be some of the last family holidays we have with her. My mom thinks I'm putting turkey over my own family, and I'm not so sure anymore. Am I the asshole? So, suspicious Basil's willingness or lack thereof to accommodate her brother aside, there's clearly some hostility she has toward her brother and his lifestyle that is seeping out throughout this entire post. Even describing the backstory of him getting very, very annoying after going vegetarian, making a bunch of very strange friends in college, and then going militantly vegan. She talks about him as some inflexible psycho who's making his dying mother's last Thanksgiving on Earth a stressful nightmare. Which, by the way, she does clarify in an update that while the mother is sick, she is most likely going to be okay and that this probably won't be her last holiday season. Now, I wouldn't necessarily handle things the way Mark did, but I also wouldn't necessarily call him the asshole. I relate to Mark. I understand Mark. I think most of us vegans know exactly what Mark is going through. See the above list of struggles. However, judging from the top comments, I'm in the minority. Not the asshole. You're not putting turkey over family. Mark is putting tofurkey over family. This guy really thinks he's really clever. You've reasonably accommodated enough with a vegan option. Mark doesn't get to hold holidays hostage because of his own dietary choices. That's ridiculous. Unfortunately, the dietary choice misconception is present throughout many of the comments, even a few comments calling it a fad diet. I've talked about this many times, veganism is not a diet, and all these comments are just further evidence of veganism being completely misunderstood. For vegans, once we have become aware of and made the connection about what happens to animals in the food system, for most of us going vegan doesn't feel like a choice after that, but rather something we have to do. Thinking back to the roasted dog analogy, if someone were to say, well, you're choosing not to eat this roasted golden retriever, wouldn't you be like, that doesn't even feel like a choice? Like, that doesn't even feel like a choice anyone should be making? And that's why I'd argue it's basically impossible to be vegan on Thanksgiving. Everyone expects the vegan to suffer silently with a smile on their face. On the one hand, sure, the Marks of the world are letting their unwillingness to be around a turkey carcass get in the way of spending time with their family. But on the other hand, couldn't you argue that everyone else is letting their obsession with / borderline addiction to this one food? Because the veganized versions of Thanksgiving sides are pretty much imperceptible from the real things. So really, it's just the turkey that they're going to be eating for a maximum of, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes? Couldn't you argue that the family, or more the sister, is choosing that over helping her brother avoid some pretty severe internal discomfort and suffering? And while she's accusing Mark of needing to be coddled, there is this sort of petulant tantrum energy about her saying, I'm having turkey on Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is about consuming a turkey's flesh. Is that what you're saying? And this just shows the power of marketing, how inextricably linked turkey and Thanksgiving are in people's minds, when really it being the centerpiece of a Thanksgiving meal was mostly an invention of the last century. Back to the roasted dog analogy, let's say you suffered this roasted dog situation for years. Don't you think maybe at one point you might be like, hey guys, could we maybe not serve a roasted dog this year? Also, I imagine for Mark, it probably felt like a win to get his family to not serve any meat at last year's event. And the family going back to business as usual has to be deflating to say the least. I also want to mention AITA and other big subreddits are sometimes known for having fake posts created to drum up engagement, aka rage bait. I'm going to flag this post as having the possibility of being that, especially with a few of the follow-up comments from the original poster, that she suspects her brother to have an undiagnosed mental illness that he refuses to get help for, that he lives in a van. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a mental illness or living in a van, but combined with the extremely negative light she paints him in throughout the rest of the post, the picture she's painting is not too far off from what I would imagine a vegan-hating troll would come up with as a creative writing exercise to make vegans look bad. Whether or not this is a legit post, the clear misunderstanding of veganism displayed in many of the comments is deflating. To be fair, there are also some comments that I mostly agreed with, and many comments sharing the opposite experiences of having holidays with vegans, but the misunderstanding is clearly present and one of the major holiday struggles. I think it would help if the people who are so annoyed by these so-called vegan antics could imagine them within the context of deep, deep sadness. We're not angry, we're sad for the animals. We're not militant, we're sad for the animals. We're not trying to control everything, we're sad for the animals. And we're so desperately sad that the people in our lives don't get it, or in many cases refuse to get it. So while of course we can be vegan over the holidays, it often feels impossible. We have to choose between not gathering around the direct byproducts of animal suffering and seeing our families on the maybe 1 or 2 occasions a year we're able to do that. We have to not only show up, but be chipper and bring the most delicious vegan food possible, and gracefully deflect all teasing comments with poise. No matter what we decide, we often end up drained by the emotional toll of it all. Honestly, for me, it's an ever-evolving relationship that I have to the holidays as a vegan. This year I will be celebrating with my family. Paul and I special ordered vegan meals from one of our favorite local vegan businesses. But last year we did our own thing. We stayed home and I made us a Thai feast to satisfy my craving for flavorful, bright, citrusy, spicy, crunchy foods that I much prefer to the traditional holiday meal. This year we're also attending a vegan Friendsgiving, which is something we've done for the past few years. I highly recommend organizing or attending something like that. It's so nice to have a safe space with only vegan food and with only vegan, so you can freely speak your thoughts on the holidays or any vegan topic without feeling like you're going to offend someone or make them feel judged. That's how I deal with it, but let me know how you deal with all of this around Thanksgiving and the holidays in general. Ultimately, everyone has their own way of dealing with it that feels best for them, and I respect that. That's it. Maybe not all of my thoughts on the holidays, but a lot of them. It feels good to get it all out. Give this video a thumbs up if you can relate or if you learned anything new. I certainly did. Subscribe to Totally Forkable if you're not already, and if you'd like to join my wonderful group of patrons, head to the link on the screen. For $3 a month, you can join the Discord community where we do weekly live chats. At the next tier up, you get exclusive video and podcast content every month. A very special thank you to my fancy forks, Claudia, Zach, and Dindin Masker. All of it helps support me as a content creator. Thanks for watching, and I'm wishing all of you a peaceful as possible upcoming holiday season. Stay safe, have fun, keep it totally forkable, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!